All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to our Taste of I Am Alchemy class. This is the second of our four-part class series, and today we're talking about the 7 stages of alchemy. In case you missed it last week, we discussed the 3 wisdoms of Hermes and how this is one of the foundational components of the I Am Alchemy course. Today, we're continuing that by diving in with the first wisdom of Hermes, which is alchemy as a body of knowledge. And I'll be giving you an insider look into one of the foundational teachings of the I Am Alchemy course. Yes, everything that we're talking about here today is in the course. This is a slightly modified version of how I teach it in the class, and you'll see why as we get going. So it's not going to be word for word in the experience, but this really is one of the pieces that we spend a whole year covering and digesting. And yes, I am sharing it with you for free. So thank you for being here. Just to give you a little bit of an idea so you can mark your calendar, the third Taste of I Am Alchemy class, which is again a free class where we'll be going into the second wisdom of Hermes, is on Friday, March 8th. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific time. So same time, but on Friday, March 8th, which is next week. And we'll be talking about working with the lunar cycle. So remembering from last week, we talked about the 3 wisdoms of Hermes: alchemy, astrology, and theurgy. So this week is alchemy, next week is astrology, and then our final week before registration closes, we'll be talking about a principle of theurgy. So I do invite you to tune back in next week for working with the lunar cycle. So today we're doing a little bit of a taster dive into a portion of the I Am Alchemy curriculum. This is something that I wanted to share with you because I know that a year is an investment not only of your time and your energy, but also your money. And if I Am Alchemy is something that you're considering doing, I want you to have all the information that you need so that you can feel really comfortable stepping into that container and saying, yes, I want to invest my energy here. And if you're here, if that's a consideration for you, awesome. I'm so glad you're here. If you're here because you're just more curious or you want to hang out and spend some time delving into a really cool body of knowledge, that's great too. And I'm so glad that you're here. Either way, I promise you're going to get something out of this and you're going to get whatever you need out of our conversation today. For those of you who actually, I'm pretty sure probably everybody on this call today has heard me talk about I Am Alchemy at some point or another. It's a year-long certification training in practical magic and personal alchemy. And it's something that I am super, super excited about. We're just heading into the 2nd year, which means that my first cohort, my beautiful, amazing, pioneering students who showed up to be the first ones to receive this body of knowledge, they're finishing up, they're graduating here in a few weeks. And it's definitely a moment for beautiful reflection. So I'm really grateful also to have this opportunity to dive in, to examine the course from the inside out and look at, okay, what are these fundamental pieces and how can I share them with a new audience? So I'm really grateful that you're here today. As I mentioned, I Am Alchemy is a course in practical magic that helps people go from being just another healer, for those of you who are on the phone, I'm making quote marks, just another healer, to a fully empowered master of transformation. And that's one of the pieces we'll be talking about today, is the roadmap to transformation and part of what makes I Am Alchemy different as a course and as a body of knowledge. This is a course that helps you master your craft by mastering yourself, because I firmly believe that the two are very deeply interlinked. There are many trainings, many courses, many certification programs out there, many intensives that offer master your craft or come into your being or come into your doingness or come into your authority or whatever it is, and they skip the fundamental step of self-mastery. It drives me bonkers. It's something that I feel very passionately about. I can easily talk about this for a long time, and I really feel as though it does a terrible injustice to the personal development and the spiritual community to skip this fundamental step. And so that's part of why when I'm offering any of these free classes, like we'll be discussing today, it's through the lens of the personal, and yet everything that we're learning can be applied to absolutely anything in our lives. So I invite you to keep that in the back of your mind as we go ahead. We're going to begin with a meditation, and then I'll walk you through an outline of what we'll be discussing today. So for right now, we're just going to take a moment to put everything aside, put your journals, pens aside, put down your tea. Go ahead and if you're listening to this while you're driving, don't do this, but still kind of engage in a place of being receptive. So I invite you to set everything down and allow yourself to make any adjustments in your body that you need to come to a place of receptive stillness. Allowing yourself to close your eyes and fully arrive in the body with the breath. Exhaling everything out. Deep inhale. And exhaling with a sigh. Again, deep inhale. And exhale with a sigh. Let's do 2 more just like that. Deep inhale all the way to the pit of the belly. Using the sigh out to activate the parasympathetic nervous system for relaxation. 1 more deep belly breath. And exhale with a sigh. Continuing to flow with the gentle rhythm of your breath. Washing in and out. Inviting yourself to follow this rhythm into a space of deeper relaxation and presence. Allowing yourself to bring your energy a little closer to home. So noticing if there are any pieces of your energy or attention that are out somewhere else, go ahead and invite them back to you with a breath. Imagine returning all the parts of yourself and your consciousness back to you now. And as you feel yourself, your energy coming back to you, we're going to invite that energy to move into a place in your body where you feel connected with your own intuitive guidance, your own wisdom. Maybe placing your hands there if you like. And you find that space in your body where you feel connected to your own inner wisdom. Take a breath into this space. Feel what it's like to connect with this part of yourself that already knows, that has access to guidance, to truth, to knowing. And we're going to pose a question to this part of yourself. We're going to ask this part of yourself quite simply, what do I need to know right now? What do I need to know right now? As your intuitive wisdom answers this question for you or offers something for you to consider, let's offer some gratitude for this knowing. And we'll ask a second question. What transformation am I currently experiencing? Or what transformation am I ready to step into? So what transformation either am I currently experiencing, or what transformation am I ready to step into? as your intuitive wisdom, your inner knowing answers this question for you. Take a breath into whatever comes to you, whether it's an image or words or sensation or simply feeling. And let's offer an internal bow of gratitude for this as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's take whatever we received in this meditation with us into our conscious awareness. So inviting ourselves to offer a deep bow of gratitude to ourselves for taking the time and space for this practice today. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And go ahead and give yourself a hug, wrapping your arms around yourself. Give yourself a little squeeze. Thank you. Bringing yourself back to your conscious awareness, wiggling your fingers and toes. When you're ready, opening your eyes. And take a minute to journal anything that you would like to keep from that practice. I'll go ahead and set a timer for about a minute. Go ahead and jot down anything you'd like. Take another 10 seconds to wrap up. Okay. How did that go? Does anyone feel inclined to share? I'll take one or two people who, if you'd like to share anything that came up. I mean, people are still writing. So all is well. Beautiful. Rosemary says all is well. Okay. Awesome. Anyone else want to share anything? And I'll share with you that what we receive in the what do I need to know right now moments, and I'm guessing that's where all is well came from, usually applies to other people too. Because when we receive these intuitive messages, they're not only for us, but they're for other people in our field. So if anything comes up, or if anyone else needs to hear that all is well, there you go. Jessica, did you want to share? Go ahead and try again. You were pretty garbled. No, maybe not. Okay, maybe it's a slow connection. All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and dive in. Thank you. I think people are probably still writing, or perhaps want to keep that share close to the vest. Either way. So today I would love to give you a little bit of an idea of what we'll be delving into. Today we're going to be talking about kind of placing our conversation within the context of last week. Again, for those of you who missed it, you are going to receive a link to the recording of last week's class. And we'll be looking at the lens of alchemical philosophy and the context of the art and science of transformation. Since that's what we're doing today, we're just going to take a brief dip our toe in the water of alchemical philosophy and then dive really specifically into the 7 stages of alchemy. Since that is, again, one of the parts that is unique about this course is really giving us a roadmap to transformation. And those 7 stages of alchemy are our roadmap for creating change. And we'll also look at where people get stuck in these 7 stages. I can pretty much guarantee you, you're going to hear some of these things and be like, oh shit, that's exactly what I do, is I get stuck in this loop, or I get stuck in this stage. And okay, now that I know that that's a thing, maybe there's some knowledge that I can implement to move into the next stage and be in this healthy cycle of transformation. Then we'll take a look at how the practice of alchemy can support your practice personally and professionally, whether it's for your work in the world or whether it's for your personal life. Regardless, I promise there's something in there for you. And we'll look at an exercise to assess where in your process, or what are your tendencies in the stages of transformation, and where do you tend to get stuck. And this will be something that I'm betting there will be something that pops up out you as an epiphany. And at the end of our time today, we'll spend about the last 10 minutes of our class today looking at what makes I Am Alchemy unique and why this course might be a really amazing fit for you. So what can I Am Alchemy do for your practice, and what can alchemy in general do for your work in the world? So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. Again, last week we talked about the three wisdoms of Hermes: alchemy, astrology, and theurgy, and why the course is structured around these three foundational principles, and why this is really important in personal development and spiritual practice, and it's something that is missing from most bodies of knowledge. So again, if you missed that, you'll have the opportunity to go back. And we discovered last week that what most teachings are missing is that roadmap to transformation, which is alchemy. Most teachings have absolutely no framework for how does transformation actually work. And I bet that as soon as you kind of think about that, you'll discover like, oh, okay, that's right. No one ever actually taught me how change works. Well, alchemy is how change works. And that's where we're delving into our conversation today. Alchemy is a body of knowledge that is over 10,000 years old. It is tremendously ancient, and there's really no way to know when it started, since its origins are shrouded in a great deal of mystery. We're not going so much into that today, but just suffice it to say that there's a lot of mythology, there's a lot of really theological intrigue involved in the origins of alchemy. And if it's something that you're interested in, then there's a lot of really great reading on the Emerald Tablet, on Hermes Trismegistus, on Thoth, and on all these other figures associated with the origins of alchemy. It has had a really dramatic influence on myriad traditions in the world, looking at bodies of knowledge such, all the way from Hermetic mystery schools and Christian mythology to Kabbalah to tarot to shamanism, to all these different bodies of knowledge all over the world have been influenced by alchemy, been influenced by these pretty unique set of principles in the process of transformation and creation that show up all over the world. So once you know the philosophy of alchemy, I guarantee you see it everywhere. It's bizarre. And once you recognize the language and the symbols, etc., looking at, okay, this is a system of knowledge that has really pervaded many other systems. And how can knowing alchemical philosophy support your modality? I can pretty much guarantee that whatever modality you practice, it would be enhanced and informed by knowing more about alchemical philosophy and bringing this to your work as well. One of the principal teachings of alchemy that we're working with, I know last week I gave you a little passage to think about from the Emerald Tablet, just a very short couple of sentences. And today I'm going to do the same, because there's an idea from alchemy that has, again, sort of worked its way into popular culture, the idea of as above, so below. And go ahead and chat in if you've heard this idea, as above, so below. I'm pretty much guaranteeing everybody has heard that. And it comes from, that's a very paraphrased version of something from, again, the Emerald Tablet from alchemical philosophy, that says that which is below corresponds to that which is above. And that which is above corresponds to that which is below to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. So notice, and Kim says yes. Okay, awesome. I'm betting others of you have heard that as well, as above, so below. But notice it says that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. So it's not a unidirectional correspondence, as the term as above, so below leads us to believe. It means looking as above, so below is the idea of, okay, whatever is happening in the above realm, meaning in the non-material celestial realms, we see that reflected in the below. In reality and in the actual text, it's a both and. That which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, meaning they inform each other. And that's really what alchemy is. It's an active working relationship between the material and the non-material realms for the purpose of creation and transformation. Remember the second part, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. Now, we're not going into an analysis of the Emerald Tablet here, but I just want to plant that seed in your mind that alchemy is really about this active, I'll say it again because it's that important, active working relationship between the material and the non-material realms for the process or for the purpose of creation and transformation. And remember that creation is in somewhat a little bit of a misnomer because, as we know from physics, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Energy is not, it doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from transformation. So in essence, whenever we talk about creation, we're talking about transformation. And whenever we're talking about transformation, we're talking about creation. So again, this relationship, this working relationship between realms, the material and the non-material, is really what gives us a roadmap to that process of transformation. Again, that's that one piece that I see really missing from most bodies of knowledge is how the heck does transformation work? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today and giving us a very simple process. And of course, there's, a lot more that we can do with this today. I'm just giving you the scratching the surface version since that's all we can really do in an hour. And yet, as we go through embedding, you'll have some ideas and energies prompted from talking about and from learning about these 7 stages of alchemy. Okay, so let's go through these 7 stages and where we tend to get stuck. And as anything comes up, if you have questions, go ahead and chat it into the chat box. Do we have any questions or comments before we go into the 7 stages? If so, go ahead and unmute yourself now and let me know if there's anything that's coming up that you feel called to share or ask. How's this feeling so far? Does this make sense? Seem like a pretty good idea, right? To know how transformation actually works. Yeah, Robin, what's up?
No, I was just saying yes, it does. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Smiley face from the comments. Awesome. Thank you. Thumbs up from the comments. Great. Okay, cool. It's feeling pretty good. Awesome. All right. So our 7 stages of alchemy that we're working with are, in essence, moving through the, I guess I would say, broad strokes understanding. First, death, then purification, then rebirth. Okay, death, purification, rebirth. In essence, and somebody else says, doing great, awesome, excited in the comments. Great, okay. And so we see this in plenty of other traditions too, right? Where we have this concept of, for example, again, in Christian mythology, since this is something that a lot of people are familiar with, we have the idea of the death of Christ, the purification, meaning like going into the tomb, and then the resurrection of Christ in an elevated form, right? And we have this again in shamanic philosophy and in shamanic wisdom and tradition. We have the death, purification, and then rebirth cycle, right? We have this in so many traditions, and yet alchemy really walks us through a step-by-step understanding of how that works. So the first stage, and if you're taking notes, I encourage you to write down these names since they're a little bit different and it's nice to just have a familiarity with them. The first stage of alchemy is calcination. Calcination. And that's C-A-L-C-I-N-ation. Okay, and this is the first stage. This is the beginning of the death process. It's the burning, the awakening, like in the sense of Kundalini awakening, right? Has anyone had a Kundalini awakening? Go ahead and just chat yes into the chat box, right? This idea of yes. Okay, Rosemary says yes. Awesome. So this idea of really intense awakening that kind of feels like you're dying, that's like, oh my gosh, all the parts of me that aren't real or are egoic or imagined seem to be like just falling off in flaming pieces, right? And all this heat moving through the body, right? This idea of the burning as awakening, it's simultaneously this death process, but it's also the coming into knowing, is a signature of calcination. Calcination is also characterized by loss and death. We can see calcination showing up in our lives, or we are prompted into calcination through near-death experiences, through experiencing really traumatizing loss, either losing a loved one or losing a job or something else that prompts us into this deep burning phase. And people get stuck here when they get stuck in either the wallowing or in this just like, my whole life is on fire and everything is going up in shit. Oh my gosh. And then we see people get stuck in depression and in, for those of us who have tools, we might be in this sort of continual obsessive cleansing, right? I know that I went through one of those phases several years ago, this idea of, oh, I need to keep burning the shit, just keep burning it away. And I had a metaphor then that I came up with that was really helpful, and I'll share it with you now. The idea that when we're planting a garden, we need to pull out the boulders, because it's really hard to plant a garden when there's boulders in the garden, right? So we pull out the boulders. Okay, and then we've got some like good sized rocks in there. Okay, we pull those out. And then at what point do we need to stop pulling out little grains of sand and just put some seeds in the ground? Right? So the obsessive and the like getting stuck in calcination looks like that continual cleansing, even down to the like, when you're beyond the point where there is any cleansing left to do, and yet you keep burning, either in a self-punishment cycle or in a belief that there is, that there are further impurities, or this idea of cleansing as the path to freedom. It's only the first part, people, right? Like the death phase is the first one, and then we still got all these other stages to go. I will very honestly say also that I see a lot of practitioners of medicine work get stuck in this part of the cycle too, either the first or the second stage, calcination or dissolution, because working with plant medicines is a lot of cleansing. It's a lot of this death process. And while that is very important, it's, remember, only the first of the stages. So if that's something that you've encountered, then please consider this in light of, okay, how is medicine work being really helpful for you in your process of cleansing? And yet, is it really supporting you in the purification and in the rebirth process as well? Or are there other tools that would be supportive for you? Looking at the second stage. So first is calcination, the burning. Second is dissolution, D-I-S-S or D-I-S solution. So there's two S's in there. And this is the process of, as the word implies, solution, dissolving, right? This is like the dissolving phase where there's surrender, is one of the energy signatures of dissolution. This is working in the subconscious realms, working in flow state. It's a very different form than calcination, and yet dissolution is still part of the death process. So we have these two very polar opposite means of working with death. One is that active, like you're burning alive sort of feeling, and the other is the dissolving in the subconscious and dissolving in connection with the flow state and with spirit. Now this is it's a state where we free up emotional energy, and yet I'm going to drop a term here, which I think is hilarious, and you probably know people like this in your life, or maybe you've been there yourself, the bliss ninny stage. This is really easy for people to get stuck in, the bliss ninny stage, where it's, and I'm sure as I say that, you know people in your life like this, where it's they're very ungrounded, and it's all just this super flowy, like everything's all good and everything is perfect, man, and the universe will provide, right? Like this idea of being so connected with the subconscious and with spirit that there is no consciousness to connect with, and the total freeing up of emotional energy to be in that ungrounded, unified subconscious state. It's useful as a stage. Let me say this, all of these stages are useful and supportive and helpful when we move through them appropriately. But when we get stuck there, it can be really disruptive to our process, and it can ultimately be harmful and detrimental. So getting stuck in the calcination is this idea of, oh, I have to keep burning alive and punishing myself and purify. And getting stuck in dissolution, we never get anything done because we're in bliss ninny stage. Okay, so remember that both of these are death stages. We don't want to get stuck in any of these stages. Moving on to the third stage is called separation. Now, separation is a part of the purification. So removing the first two are the death phase, and then these next couple stages are part of the purification phases. And separation is the idea of filtering. It's that which gives us perspective. Okay, so we burned everything down and then we dissolved it, and now we're filtering it out. We're picking out the pieces. This is where we zoom out a little bit and we start to have connection to our vision. Okay, well, if that wasn't what I wanted for my life, well, what do I want for my life? And we analyze what worked, what didn't. What do we want to keep from this? What do we want to let go of? This is where we start to have this process of bringing the mind into it a little bit more for analysis and for review. And this is where it is really easy for us to get stuck in the examination of the energies. And this is somewhere where I know that I tend to hang out in separation. I tend to like this phase where it feels really comfortable for me to be in this, like, okay, I burned everything down and I dissolved it. And now I'm reviewing. I really like reviewing. I do really well with that. And so knowing that that's a tendency for me, I'm sharing this with you because this is part of the practice that we're going to do, is what are our own tendencies. There are tools and practices that are really helpful for me to move into the next stage, move into beyond the separation. Okay, what do I actually do with it? And so if you know that, then again, these tools and techniques that we are not going to be talking about today, they're part of the alchemy course when we're diving really in depth into these stages. Knowing these tools can be really helpful for moving us through the stages in a really effective, supportive way. So separation, the danger of getting stuck in separation is that we never take action, we never do anything, and we're stuck in this analysis mode. Now, the fourth stage of alchemy is called conjunction. And conjunction is that, so imagine if we burned it, we dissolved it, we separated it out, and now we're putting it back together. Conjunction is things coming together. It's the selective recombination of all the pieces that we chose to keep from the separation stage. And it's the putting them back together and bringing them into a union. This is the first time in alchemy that the thing that we burned has had a body again. But it's not the finalized body. It's a rudimentary body. Think like, if you're familiar with any practices that work with golems, right? The idea of like making a little figure out of mud, like a temporary body, sort of a base level body. Then the conjunction stage would correspond to that, the idea of making a temporary body to work with. And this is where we're getting back in balance. We're getting grounded. There's a lot of symbolism of unification of the feminine and the masculine, the inner king and queen, that take place in the conjunction. This is a very heart level phase where there's a lot of energies around what is our relationship to not only becoming grounded and coming back into a body, but coming into union. So part of this, remember, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below. This idea of the interplay between the material and the non-material realms, the conjunction stage is one of the places where those really come together. And people get stuck here when they get stuck in the idea of, okay, I'm back in a body, I'm good. So either they're stuck in a base form and they haven't gone into the next stages around elevating and reanimating the form, or they get stuck in just how good it feels to be in this unified state and knowing that there is more to come. And part of the rebirth does entail a second death. And that's actually what's next, the fermentation stage. This is the fifth stage in alchemy. It's called fermentation. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the rotting stage. So I like to give the analogy of sauerkraut, okay, when we're talking about fermentation, where it's like you have this jar of like stinky, rotting cabbage that and you're just letting it sit there. You have this jar of like bubbly stuff sitting on your counter and it's like smelling kind of vinegary and whatever. But at a certain point, it transforms from rotting to having new life, right? So like the idea of at what point is sauerkraut just bad rotting cabbage, and at what point is it actually full of really healthy, nutritious, delicious enzymes and probiotics and healthy bacteria, and at what point does it become re-enlivened and reanimated? And the fermentation stage is exactly the same. It is the second death that comes at the end of that conjunction stage, when we have that base body, the temporary body, that is the rotting and the processing and the reanimation of this form into an elevated form. So fermentation is that stillness period. And it's uncomfortable. It's, again, it's called the second death, right? So we can get stuck here if either we're avoiding the second death of like, I don't want to do that again, that's not comfortable. Or we can get stuck here if we keep stirring it, right? Like, you don't stir sauerkraut, you just let it sit there. And this is the thing that, when we're doing this process, it's like, okay, how's it looking now? And you take the lid off and you stir it around, right? If we're doing too much and we're moving too much energy through our field during this process of fermentation, we can actually disrupt our process and get kicked back to the very beginning, where we go into that first death once again. So keeping in mind that there are a couple of ways to get stuck in the fermentation process. Best to just let it sit, let it happen on its own, let the rotting continue. This would be not the most elegant transition, but that, again, that idea of the death of Christ, right? Like, the fermentation stage was when he was in the cave rotting, like being purified and being reanimated in the second death beyond the physical death, so that he could come into elevated form. So it's that idea of us going into our own tombs, our own caves of rebirth to have this process. A little gross to think about, I know, but it's the way of transformation, right? We all got to go there, and I'm sure we've all been there at some point in our lives. But after fermentation, we get to work in distillation. Now, this distillation we might know of in the idea of distilling alcohol, distilling essential oils. It's this idea of finding the essence of something, coming down to that core truth, that purest drop of essence. And this is, from after the fermentation stage, we're reanimated. We receive this infusion of new energy, and we want to come to what is the core of that energy? What is the precise signature? And this is, truth seeking. This is the coming into that stage just before actualization, where it's really clear, where we're in that connected with our own inner wisdom. We're really balanced in our material and non-material realms. But we can get stuck here when we get stuck in the non-actualizing state. And this is where I see a lot of people kind of miss that last stage of alchemy, which is that actualization phase. And when we get stuck in distillation, we're stuck in the truth crystallizing and in the almost navel gazing obsession about, how do I get to the core? I mean, like the corest core, like the most essence-based essence, right? This almost obsessive distill. And at some point there is, okay, how do we actualize that? How do we come into the embodiment of that? And that's the final stage of alchemy. The seventh stage of alchemy is called coagulation. Coagulate. Think like your blood coagulates when you're bleeding, like it comes into a clump. And again, like not the most cute or elegant metaphor, but this idea of solidification, right? Where we take this pure drop, this pure essence of our energy and our understanding, and it crystallizes into form. And that's the coagulation stage, where we come into wholeness and we claim our, again, that right relation between the material and the non-material realms, and we become truly divine embodied beings. Divine, meaning the above realm, embodied, meaning the below realm, divine embodied beings. These, again, that intersection, the active working relationship between the material and the non-material realms, the as above, so below, and the interrelationship between them is the result of the coagulation stage. And this is where historically in alchemy, you might be familiar with the idea of the elixir of life, right? Like that chemical that produces immortality, right? The elixir of life that you're able to produce once you've reached the coagulation stage, or the philosopher's stone, which turns all metals to gold, right? So do we see, by the way, I totally didn't mention that. And it's so funny because usually that's how people are familiar with alchemy, but the idea of turning lead into gold is traditionally what we think of when we're thinking of alchemy. And yet everything that we talked about, that's the physical metallic correspondence to the spiritual journey of the practitioner. So everything that we talked about, all these 7 stages, are what an alchemist would go through to transform lead, physical lead, into gold. And yet those are also the same 7 stages that we go through in our own personal alchemy of transforming the leaden base, unactualized material of the self into the fully activated, embodied, actualized version of ourselves as gold, as our fully divine embodied being selves. So I know that was a lot that I just threw at you. Let's take a little moment for questions. Let's pause. Anything jumping out at you that you'd like to clarify or striking you as revelatory? How's that feeling? I would love to hear from 1 or 2 people. Any questions or comments? What's the stuck phase of fermentation? Okay, the stuck phase of fermentation is either getting stuck in the doing, right? Like the idea of sitting there rotting is really uncomfortable. So we either do, meaning we stir ourselves and we just move a lot of energy around and we mess up the process and we get kicked back to the very beginning, or resistance at entering it into entering into it in the first place. So we can get stuck either by like resistance or by obsessively doing. Yeah, so it's stuck is a little bit of a misnomer because we don't actually hang out in there. We get either resistant, like we don't ever go there, or we go back to the beginning. Yeah, thank you. Awesome. Any other questions or comments? Good question. Stoked to be able to see, Jessica says, stoked to be able to see where I've gotten stuck. Cool. More excited about recognizing that it was needed, but that I can move through now. Okay, I'm curious, Jessica, where did you get stuck? Rosemary says, amazing work. Jessica says, super awesome. Cool. Awesome. Okay, well, this is a great segue. Can you say more about how this is or isn't linear? Yes, awesome. That's a great question. Okay, thank you, Nicole. So the idea of I'm offering this as a very linear trajectory, right? Like the 7 stages of alchemy. And in reality, it is a cyclical process. Thank you for naming that. That's something that I didn't explicitly say. We are moving through the 7 stages of alchemy throughout our entire lives. And in multiple ways, right? Like we can be having a very micro cycle of the 7 stages of alchemy and then a long-term trajectory of the 7 stages of alchemy, and in all these different places at once. And knowing that our relationships move through the 7 stages of alchemy, our bodies, our intellects, our spiritual lives. This is happening simultaneously through all these different degrees of our being. And the more awareness we can bring to the process of transformation, the more mastery we can have to actively participate in our own transformation. And knowing that when we don't always complete the process. This is the other thing, is that we can't really skip any steps. That's part of the deal, is like you can't skip any of these. And sometimes we might be looping, right? So like say for example, like I mentioned to you, I used to get sort of stuck in the separation stage. And so what that meant for me was that, okay, I would burn the stuff and then I would go through the dissolution and then I would be in separation and the over analysis to the point where like, no, I got to go back and burn more. So then I'd go right back to calcination and I would never reach the 4th stage. And that happened for a while. I was on repeat in the first 3 stages. And then once I was able to come into the conjunction stage, then I was able to move through the rest of these stages. So knowing that alchemy is it's a precise and it's a delicate process, both in the lab and in the lab of self. So we're moving through this cyclical process. And then once we're done with coagulation, or once we come into the actualized state, then pretty much invariably there is something else to be burned, right? Once we're in actuality, then there's always a layer of calibration and adjustment, and then it's time for a new cycle of transformation. So that is a really great question. It is not a linear process. It is a cyclical process, and we can loop anywhere in that process. So it's this idea of knowing, okay, what are our patterns? What are our trajectories? How do we relate to these energy signatures? If I said some things in here that have never crossed your mind, then maybe you haven't gotten to that stage, or maybe that's a stage where you tend not to hang out as much, or maybe it's a stage that you're really comfortable in. So you just move through it, blow right through it, and then move on to the next one. So I hope that answers your question, Nicole. If you have further questions, go ahead and chat on in. Yes, beautiful, thank you, awesome. Jessica says a few places, phase 1 and phase 2, phase 5. So stage 1 and 2 and 5. The phases are different things. That's something for a different class. And may have gone back a few steps. I understand I hold back the embodiment, often looping. Yes, okay, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So we're gonna go ahead and we'll just do a quick exercise, pretty much exactly what Jessica was describing here. So the exercise that I have planned for us today, and maybe you've kind of just intuitively done this already, is to look at what are my tendencies in the stages of alchemy? Where do I tend to get stuck? Where do I tend to loop? What stages do I feel really comfortable in, or what stages do I like to hang out in? Like, what's my comfort zone? So I'll go ahead and set a timer for about 2 minutes. So you can go ahead and just journal about that for about 2 minutes. Ready, go. Where do you get stuck? What stages are you really comfortable with? And perhaps what might need your attention? Go ahead and take about another 10 seconds. And I would love to hear from a couple of you. What did you get out of that experience? Just like Jessica was sharing where she tends to get stuck. What did you notice? Where do you get stuck? Where do you loop? What needs your attention? Either unmuting yourself or chatting into the chat box. Maybe people are still writing, but okay. If you would like to share either one thing that you noticed or one thing you got out, now is the time, because we're going to shift gears here in a pretty quick minute. Rosemary says, need more time for analysis and absorbing all this good info. Okay, great, awesome, cool. And if that's the case, fantastic. And you will receive the recording of our conversation today, so you can go back and re-listen, re-absorb, and digest in light of that experience. So I would love to just take a little moment. Are there any questions before we close? Because we're going to shift gears here into talking about the I AM Alchemy course. Any remaining questions or thoughts about this in terms of the knowledge that we've discussed today? Nope. Okay. All right, so I'm going to be pasting a link into your chat bar right there. It is a link to the I AM Alchemy course, and this is what we're going to be shifting gears a little bit, like I said, and looking at what can I AM Alchemy do for your practice. Now, this is something that, again, if you were on last week, then this idea of continuing to step into this course and continuing to step into this body of knowledge, whether or not the course is a great fit for you, looking at what is a teaching like this offering and what can it do for your practice, either personally or professionally, or both. And so we'll be looking at what is I AM Alchemy, what sets it apart from other courses, and what are some of the things that are included, like what could you expect from this course. So first off, I AM Alchemy is a year-long certification training course in practical alchemy, practical magic, and the art and science of transformation for the self. We work with practitioners who are looking to be moving from that path of being just another healer to a fully empowered master of transformation in their own lives and in the lives of their clients and the lives of the people who they're influencing and who they're working with. So this is a course that helps you master your craft by mastering yourself. Everything we do, just like we talked about today, is through that personal lens, and yet it's all applicable to everything outside of ourselves. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of the people in the course this year, we've got a life coach, we've got a Reiki master, we've got a sound healer, we've got a PhD student, we've got a several times published renowned author in Hermetic Mystery Schools, and we've got a medicine worker. So all these people who are working in different fields of influence to assimilate and absorb this body of knowledge to be of service in the world. I AM Alchemy is different from other courses because it helps you, again, master your craft by mastering yourself. This is one of the foundational components, just like we talked about today, like we talked about last week. Everything goes through that lens of self-mastery, because if we don't know who we are and our intuitive gifts, then how can we possibly be of service in the world? It also works in practical magic, this idea that if a spiritual practice or if a teaching is not applicable to your lived, embodied human experience, then I firmly believe that it is not worth your time. So everything we're doing is through that lens of how does this apply to your life? How does this apply to your health, your relationships, your money, your business, your home, your family? Everything that we're looking at is through the lens of this is something that you can act upon and implement. We build in the foundation of the Three Wisdoms of Hermes, just like we talked about last week with alchemy, astrology, and theurgy. Building on this three-component piece is prevalent throughout the entire course. So working that practical magic in through the process of bringing divine into physical realm, through the process of transformation itself, and working in that active relationship between the non-material and the material realms. It's something that it's all very tangible, it's all very grounded, very specific teachings that are really accessible. And yes, there's a lot of energy moving, there's a lot of subtle work, but it's that union between art and science which makes it really different. And that's part of my personal philosophy. I am a scientist by training. I'm a biologist by training. And so my love for science and for the tangible, practical realms makes its way into our spiritual practice. So there's a lot that you can work with. We work with the 7 stages of alchemy, but much slower than we did today. We spend about 7 weeks in each of these stages of alchemy, working with specific meditations, healing tools, working with energy signatures and ceremony to promote the full in-depth processing through each of these 7 stages of alchemy. So imagine 7 stages spent in calcination. It's a lot, right? And 7 stages in dissolution. I mean, like just knowing that you're going to be spending that much in-depth time immersed in each of these stages of alchemy, like you really absorb it. And I can tell you by the end of 7 weeks, you're really tired of burning and ready to move on. But it's something that when we do it that thoroughly, we get to really implement and work with the energies of it and be masterful with it in other ways. This I Am Alchemy is also unique because it is based on community. Not only are you learning from me, but you're learning from each other. The group that we'll be working with together is a carefully curated cohort of somewhere in the range of 6 to 10 people. So this idea that you're spending a whole year journeying with the same small group of people, you'll have accountability buddies, you'll have a mentor from this year's cohort of the I Am Alchemy curriculum if you choose. And so there's a lot of support, again, not only from me, but from the people in your group. I am not admitting everyone into this course. I have received applications from people who I feel like might not be the best fit, and I am turning them down. This is a very carefully curated process that I want to make sure this process and this course is not only the right fit for the people, but the right fit for the group overall. So know that everybody who is in there by my invitation. So it's a very safe, curated group of people. This course is unique because it explores your own unique gifts and your path through the lens of alchemy. Yes, we are working with curriculum. Yes, I'm giving you teachings. Yes, it's a body of knowledge. And yet everything that we're doing is through your own lens. So again, I told you all the very disparate people that we have in this year's course, they're all looking at alchemy and applying alchemy through completely different lenses. The way that my PhD student is working with alchemy is completely different from how the life coach is working with alchemy, completely different from how the medicine worker is working with alchemy. It's all through their own lens. And that's something that I want everyone to have, is have it be accessible and tangible to your own process. And we also work for mentorship in your practice and in your business. This is something that I, as a successful, I'm supporting myself completely 100% by doing this work. There's a lot of tools and skills that I have learned in my own practice and the way that I offer my practice that I am able to offer to people who are looking to put this into their own practice and looking to make a living doing their spiritual work. So that is something that we do spend a couple of classes looking at, okay, how does this translate to a practice? How does money work in our financial realms and in the realm of service, and how we're being of service in the world? And if that's something that you're interested in receiving, it can come as much on the one-on-one as well. I review website copy. I'll help you look at how you're translating and communicating your service in the world and being really clear in your offerings as well. And that's something that a lot of spiritual teachings don't include, right? It's kind of an either or. With me, you get both. So what this course includes is not only online classes. We have 36 online classes just like this where we're talking over Zoom. Usually you can see people's faces because it's a small group, so everybody's got their cameras on. But it includes in-residence training as well, which takes the form of retreats. We have 15 days of in-residence training, which means 3 4-day retreats and 1 3-day graduation weekend at the end of the course. So these are 4 retreat experiences that are spread out throughout the entire course, 1 right at the beginning, 1 right at the end, and 2 kind of in the middle. And these 15 days of in-residence training are all included. There's nothing else that you have to pay for. You just have to get there. And it's at a beautiful retreat center owned by a friend of mine just outside of Portland. She's an amazing chef. We will be eating like kings and queens for the days that we're there, and being about half an hour outside of Portland, but feeling like we're completely off the grid. It's the best of both worlds. Really beautiful property. And doing movement practice together, doing ceremony together, playing together, having amazing snacks together, and doing practice in this beautiful space. It includes 12 one-on-one sessions with me. So you get one-on-one time, not semi-private work, not small group coaching. You get one-on-one work with me. And if you're in Portland, you get to come see me in person. That's an option that I offer only to my alchemy students. Otherwise, if you're not local, we get to meet over the phone or over Zoom, just like this. You receive the I Am Alchemy book. There's a book that is in the process of being published as we speak. My students this year were very patient in dealing with lots of different documents that I was sending them. There wasn't a cohesive book. I was putting it together over the course of this year. But 2019 students will have an actual course book manual in addition to our course materials, our online materials, and supplementary readings available to you in perpetuity, meaning you can access our teachings anytime. The course includes practicum sessions, so demonstrating your practical knowledge and mastery of the course in the last half of the year. We have an online portal where all of our materials are together. It's not on Facebook. It's off of Facebook. There's no distractions. You don't need a Facebook account to be a part of this online portal. And it has all of our recordings and course materials in one spot, as well as different group interaction experiences in the online portal. We have special guest teachers who come in and impart their own wisdom. So practicing alchemists in the field in different ways who come in and juice up our knowledge experience together. And we have Ask Me Anything, meaning I am available to you, be it by email between our sessions. I'm available to you to just drop a quick line and say like, hey, do you have a minute to chat? I have this really big thing coming up and I need some support. Yes, I am available to you. This is not a like strict boundaries on contacting me. If you need something, you can ask and I am there to support you, which is a little bit different from how people work with me in mentorship, where there's a different way of interacting. So my students who choose to spend a year with me get to come play in my world a little bit closer, and there's a really deep process of transformation that happens as a result. Last but not least, students who enjoy I AM Alchemy also, or enjoy meaning participate in, also receive a free ticket to I AM Lightworker, which is a 4-day intensive healership training coming up in October. That ticket is worth $997 and you get one for free. So $1,000 value for this 4-day intensive training that is included because you are a part of this course. The investment for you is an initial deposit of $777 to hold your space in the course. And then when the course begins in April, starting April 2nd, you would be charged 12 monthly payments of $997. Or if you choose to pay in full and you'll save about $1,500, you can pay in full $10,500 that would be due at the beginning of April. So if that's something that you'd like to do, that is an option. Again, the monthly payments of $997 or pay in full of $10,500, and you save about $1,500 if you choose that option. There are 5 spots left. I've already taken applications and deposits from a handful of awesome, amazing people that I'm so excited to delve in with, and there are 5 spaces left. So our course begins April 2nd, and your last day to register is March 22nd. So it is coming up, people. This is like 3 weeks away. You have 3 weeks left before you need to register. But if you submit your application by the end of today, Thursday, February 28th, I will give you $250 off of your deposit. And so I'm not asking you to submit any money today, just submit an application. And so using that link that I just sent you in the chat bar, you can go ahead and click on the big pink button in that link, submit your application, and we'll set up a time to talk. And if you put your application in by the end of today, I will give you $250 off your deposit, and you will secure your space in the course before the spots are full. So again, there are 5 spots left. We're almost at that crunch time of taking it off the table. So are there any questions that you have for me about the course? Anything that you are wanting to know? Any unanswered questions that you would like to hear about? If so, either go ahead and chat it in or unmute yourself. No questions? That's all pretty clear? Sounds really complete and amazing. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, beautiful comment chatted in there. Sounds really complete and amazing, yes. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then thank you so much for being here. I'm really, really happy that we get to take this time together today. Thank you for choosing to be here. Again, just to put it on your calendar, the next Taste of I AM Alchemy class, which will be going into the next Wisdom of Hermes, again, we're working with the Three Wisdoms of Hermes in this little taster class series, is next Friday, March 8th, 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific time. And we're talking about working with the lunar cycle. So practical magic for working lunar alchemy. And thank you again so much for being here. We went a little bit over our time today. It's 11:11 right now. Awesome. Thank you so much for participating. And I really hope you get a lot out of digesting this process and experience. What you can expect from me, I will send you a follow-up email. Kim says, thank you so much. You're welcome, Kim. Thank you so much for being here. I will send you a follow-up email later today that will have a link to the recording of this class, as well as a link to the recording of last class in case you missed it or in case you want to revisit it. I will also have a link to the I Am Alchemy page, just like I typed in the chat box here, and a reminder that you receive $250 off your deposit by submitting your application today, Thursday, by the end of the day. So if you would like to, again, a no commitment application. This does not mean that you're obligated to be in the course. This means that you're interested, so that we can set up a time to have a conversation and see if this is a great fit for you. So let me know if that is the case. And I am delighted that you're here. Thank you so much for taking the time. Have a beautiful rest of your day. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. And I will talk to you later. Bye.